Imagine this. You're in the middle of a heated argument. Street. Your pulse is racing, your mind is firing off responses, and you're desperately trying to prove your point. You're convinced that if you just say the right thing, if you just articulate your position perfectly, you'll finally win. But ask yourself, has anyone ever truly won an argument? Have you ever changed someone's mind by out-talking them, by out-reasoning them, by overwhelming them with logic? Or do arguments simply reinforce the very positions they claim to challenge? Friedrich Nietzsche saw this for what it was: not a battle of truth, but a battle of ego. He believed that arguments, the way most people engage in them, are not signs of strength but of weakness. They are the desperate grasping of those who lack true power, those who seek validation rather than understanding, those who mistake noise for influence. And if that's true, then what does real strength look like? What does it mean to exist beyond the need to argue? Nietzsche was relentless in his philosophy. He did not believe in compromise, in endless debate, in the illusion that truth could be reached through mere verbal sparring. He saw arguments as symptoms of a deeper insecurity, a desperate need to be right, to dominate through words rather than through action. And yet, in today's world, we are constantly encouraged to argue. Social media thrives on it. Every discussion turns into a debate, every opinion into a battlefield. But ask yourself, have you ever left an argument feeling victorious? Or do arguments simply create more division, more resentment, more entrenchment in one's own beliefs? Nietzsche would say that the strong do not argue, they act. They live in such a way that their truth is undeniable, not because they force it upon others, but because it is self-evident, it is embodied, it is real.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
Think about the most powerful people in history. Do they argue, or do they shape reality through their actions? Do they waste energy trying to convince others with words, or do they let their results speak for them? Nietzsche's philosophy is brutal in its clarity. If you have to argue for your power, you do not have it. If you have to convince others of your worth, you have already lost. True strength does not need validation. It does not need approval. It simply is. And once you understand this, you begin to see arguments for what they really are: not a path to truth, but a distraction from it. But let's go deeper. Why do people argue in the first place? At the surface level, it seems like a pursuit of truth, a way to clarify ideas, to sharpen understanding. But Nietzsche would say that this is rarely the true motivation. Most arguments are not about truth, they are about control. They are about the need to assert dominance, to prove oneself, to force another into submission. And this, Nietzsche believed, is a sign of weakness. Because if your beliefs are strong, if your understanding is deep, why would you need to fight for it? Why would you need to convince anyone? Wouldn't the truth, if it were truly powerful, make itself known through action, through results, through the sheer force of reality? The weak argue, the strong demonstrate. But here's the paradox: the more you argue, the less you are heard. The louder you speak, the more resistance you create. Have you ever noticed that the people who talk the most often say the least? That those who constantly need to explain themselves rarely have anything truly profound to offer? Nietzsche understood this deeply. He saw that true influence does not come from debate, from verbal combat, but from presence, from action, from the ability to embody one's philosophy without needing to force it upon others. And yet, most people do the opposite. They waste their energy in endless disputes, in trying to convert others to their way of thinking, rather than simply living in a way that commands respect without a single word. Think about your own life. How much energy have you wasted in arguments that led nowhere? How many hours have you spent trying to convince people who had no intention of changing their mind? What if, instead of arguing, you simply acted? What if, instead of debating, you demonstrated? What if, instead of proving yourself, you became someone whose truth was so undeniable that it needed no defense? This is the essence of Nietzsche's philosophy: not to fight for validation, but to transcend the very need for it. But let's take this further. If arguments are for the weak, then what is the alternative? How do the strong engage with the world? Nietzsche offers a radical answer: they create. They do not waste time debating reality, they shape it. But they do not seek to convince, they manifest their vision so completely that others cannot help but see it. And this is where most people fail. They believe that power comes from winning arguments, from being intellectually superior, from out-talking their opponents. But real power is not in words, it is in action. It is in becoming so undeniable that no argument is needed. So, ask yourself, are you spending your energy proving, or are you spending it creating? Are you caught in the endless cycle of trying to be right, or are you focused on becoming something that no one can deny? Because this is the real secret: those who argue are playing a small game. They are seeking validation from others, seeking recognition, seeking approval. But those who are truly powerful do not seek approval. They do not need it. They are too busy shaping the world in their image. And here's the final truth: the moment you stop arguing, you become untouchable. The moment you no longer need to prove yourself, you are free. Free to build, free to create, free to move forward without being dragged into the petty battles of the weak. Nietzsche's insight is simple but profound: the strong do not argue. They do not need to. Their existence is their argument. And once you understand this, everything changes. You stop wasting time. You stop seeking validation. You stop engaging in battles that do not serve you. And instead, you become what you were meant to be: not a debater, not a persuader, but a force of nature, undeniable, unstoppable, beyond the reach of mere words. If you've made it this far, then something inside you is already shifting. A voice you may have ignored for years is starting to get louder, the voice that tells you that you were never meant to live in chains, that you were never meant to watch life pass you by while telling yourself stories about why you can't, why you won't, why it's too late. Deep down, something in you has always known that you were capable of more, that you were never truly powerless, that the version of yourself you've been living as is just a fraction of what you could be. But acknowledging that is one thing, acting on it is another. Because once you see the illusion of the victim mindset for what it is, you are left with a choice that will shape the rest of your life. Do you step forward into power, or do you retreat into the comfort of excuses? Do you embrace the terrifying freedom of responsibility, or do you stay in the familiar prison of blame? This is not a small decision. This is the decision. Because once you choose power, you can never choose it. Once you realize that you are in control, You can never pretend to be helpless again. But before we go any further, let's confront the last illusion head-on. Because even now, even as you feel the fire of possibility burning inside you, there is still resistance. There is still a part of you clinging to the old identity, the old narrative, the old excuses. Maybe that part of you is saying, but what if I fail? What if I try to change and I don't succeed? What if I take responsibility and still don't get what I want? And those are fair questions, because power does not come with guarantees. Responsibility does not promise easy success. But here's the truth: failure within power is still better than comfort within victimhood. Because when you fail as a victim, you reinforce the belief that life is unfair. But when you fail as someone who takes full ownership of their life, you learn, you adapt, you grow, you move forward rather than staying stuck. And that is the only real difference between people who succeed and people who don't. Not intelligence, not talent, not luck, but the refusal to stay stuck. The refusal to let failure become an identity. The refusal to let setbacks be the end of the story. So now, let's talk about what happens when you fully commit to this path. What happens when you decide, once and for all, that you will never again live as a victim? The first thing that happens is discomfort. And this is where most people turn back. Because the moment you stop blaming the world, the moment you stop using excuses, and the moment you stop seeing yourself as powerless, you are forced to confront yourself in a way you never have before. You are forced to look at all the ways you have held yourself back, all the opportunities you ignored, all the times you could have acted but didn't. And that level of self-awareness can feel like a punch to the gut. Because when you've spent years believing that life is the problem, realizing that you were the one standing in your own way is painful. But that pain is necessary. That pain is the breaking of old chains, and that pain is the death of an illusion. And if you can face it, if you can sit with that truth without running from it, then you will experience something most people never do: true freedom. Because here's the secret they don't tell you about power. It is not about control over others. It is not about external success. It is not about achieving some perfect life where nothing ever goes wrong. Real power is internal. It is the ability to remain unmoved by circumstances. It is the ability to adapt to challenges without collapsing. It is the ability to wake up every day and know that no matter what happens, you are in control of your response, your actions, your mindset. Imagine living like that. Imagine never again being thrown off course by someone else's opinion. Imagine never again feeling paralyzed by fear or failure. Imagine never again wasting energy on blame or resentment. Imagine knowing, with absolute certainty, that everything you need is already within you. That is what this is really about. Not just escaping the victim mindset, but stepping into a level of self-mastery that most people will never reach. But let's go deeper, because this is not just about changing your thoughts. This is about breaking a cycle that has existed for generations. Think about it. Where did your victim mindset come from? Were you born with it? Or was it something you absorbed from the people around you? From family members who taught you, consciously or unconsciously, that life was unfair? From a society that profits off of keeping people feeling small? From a culture that rewards complaining more than action? Because if you inherited this mindset, then breaking free from it is not just a personal victory, it is a revolution. It is you deciding that the cycle ends with you, that you will not pass down the same limitations to the next generation, that you will not spend your life repeating the same patterns of helplessness and frustration, that you will be the one who changes the story, not just for yourself, but for everyone who comes after you. And that leads us to the final step, the step that most people never take. Once you have broken free, once you have tasted real power, once you have stepped into full responsibility, what do you do with it? Because power without purpose is empty. If you stop being a victim, but you do nothing meaningful with your freedom, then what was the point? This is where your real journey begins. Because the moment you reclaim your power is the moment you realize that life is not about avoiding suffering, it is about creating meaning. It is about using your experiences, your challenges, your growth to build something greater than yourself. Maybe that means creating something. Maybe that means helping others escape their own prisons. Maybe that means simply living with a level of joy and confidence that inspires others to do the same. Whatever it is, the choice is yours. And that is the beauty of true freedom. So now, the final question. The question that will determine everything from this moment forward. Will you let this be just another idea that excites you for a moment and then fades? Or will you act? Will you take this realization and do something with it? Because the truth is, most people hear powerful ideas and do nothing. They get inspired, but they don't change. They have moments of clarity, but they don't follow through. And that is the final test. Will you be one of those people, or will you be the exception? Will you let this be the moment everything changes? Because if you do, if you truly commit to this path, then you will never be the same again. And that is what this was always about. Not just breaking free from the victim mindset, but waking up to who you were always meant to be. The question is, are you ready? Because if you are, then this is your moment. Step forward, take control, and never look back. This is it. The moment where everything either changes or stays the same. You have come this far, you have felt the weight of truth pressing against the illusions that have kept you trapped. And now, you stand at the edge of a decision that most people will never make. Because here's the reality: most people don't want freedom. They say they do. They dream about it. They admire those who have it. But when it comes time to claim it for themselves, they hesitate. Because freedom is responsibility. Freedom is accountability. Freedom is the terrifying realization that there is no one left to blame, no external force left to point fingers at, no excuse left to hide behind. And that is where most people turn back. They retreat into the comfort of their familiar suffering, into the safety of the stories they have told themselves for years. But you are not most people. If you were, you would not still be here. Something in you knows that the time for excuses is over, that the time for waiting is over, that the life you want, the strength you crave, the power you were always meant to have is on the other side of one final decision to never again see yourself as a victim. But this is where the real challenge begins, because shedding the victim mindset is not like flipping a switch. It is a battle. A war between the part of you that has grown comfortable in limitation and the part of you that is hungry for something greater. And that battle does not end when you say, "I choose power," but it begins, because the old patterns will try to pull you back. Your mind will whisper doubts. When things go wrong, you will feel the temptation to slip back into blame, into resentment, into the belief that life is unfair and that you are powerless to change it. And in those moments, you will have to make a choice to reject the easy road and take the hard one. A choice to remind yourself that setbacks do not make you a victim. A choice to stand firm in the belief that no matter what happens, you're in control of how you respond, how you adapt, how you move forward. And that choice is not made once. It is made every single day. Look around you. Look at the world. How many people do you see who are truly free? How many people do you see who have taken complete ownership of their lives? Not many, because this path is rare. It is lonely. It is difficult. But it is also the only path that leads to true power. And power is not about controlling others. It is about controlling yourself. It is about becoming the kind of person who cannot be broken by circumstances, who cannot be swayed by fear, who cannot be stopped by doubt. It is about becoming the kind of person who does not need external validation, who does not need permission, but who does not wait for life to hand them opportunities, but instead creates them. And that kind of person is unstoppable. So now, I ask you, who will you be from this moment forward? Will you be the person who hears these words, feels inspired for a moment, and then goes back to old habits, old excuses, old limitations? Or will you be the person who decides right now that enough is enough? That you will never again let yourself be controlled by the illusion of victimhood? That from this moment on, you are the author of your life, the architect of your destiny, the master of your own mind? Because that choice is yours, and no one can make it for you. No one can break the chains for you. No one can walk this path for you. But if you truly choose it, if you truly commit, then you will never again be at the mercy of life. You will never again be trapped by fear. You will never again be the person who wonders, what if? Because you will already know. You will know that you took the hardest path, the rarest path, the path that most people are too afraid to walk. And in doing so, you will become something most people will never be free.